breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. Our producer is Robbie Rosenhaus, does a great job pulling our clips and interviews and getting us on the air. And Robbie, that was kind of a downer game last Thursday in LA against the Chargers. Vikings falling 37-10, dropping to 3-4 on the season and putting themselves in a tough spot heading to Motown, where they've lost the last 4 times and against the Lions, who are 5-2. Another big game. And we know, Robbie, upsets happen every week in the NFL. Anything is possible, but this is going to be a tall order for the Vikings going to go into Detroit to get that win. And we're going to break that down more fully on Thursday. But looking back at that Charger game, just a big disappointment, and certainly should be the end of Carson Wentz as a starting quarterback, and J.J. McCarthy expected to return to the starting lineup this week against Detroit.
Yeah, and I just think that this year's kind of focus has shifted from all the positive vibes and momentum going into the season of could we be kind of a sleeper candidate for potentially a big run in the NFC. And now we have questions at quarterback and we have injury problems on both sides of the ball. So right now, as we approach midseason, I think this was a good time for kind of that mini bye and just everybody just take a deep breath and realize the season isn't over and it's kind of a restart. They're resetting things here with this quarterback. It's a division game. I remember Mike Zimmer and now Kevin O'Connell have really emphasized division games, and I think this is what they have been targeting all along for JJ. Forget the rumors, forget the nonsense. I'm very happy to see him in uniform this week and playing, because if we don't know what we have, Jeff, then we're not going to know going into next season exactly what the plan is.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. And you want him to get the experience, whether it's positive or somewhat negative, but to get that starting experience. And who knows what can happen second half of the season. He could get hot, start to really get rid of the ball quickly. He's got the great supporting cast of skill players, and Jefferson and Addison, Hockenson, Naylor, Aaron Jones is back. But it's going to be tough sledding until they get that offensive line back figured out and healthy. And that starts with Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill as the bookend Pro Bowl caliber tackles. And Darrisaw lasted 9 plays in the game. O'Neill was inactive against the Chargers with his knee injury. They have got to get those guys coming out of this mini bye. You have to get them back in the lineup against a Detroit team with Aiden Hutchinson and company that can rush the passer. The Lions can be susceptible in the back end if McCarthy has time to throw. And Justin Jefferson has had huge games against the Lions secondary. We know that. Big thing again, get those guys healthy, get them back in the lineup. Indications early are that they should be able to come back. And hopefully that will be the case come Sunday. But it's certainly for JJ, I think in some respects, if you look at it, I think it's maybe a really good time to bring him back. Or some people would say, oh, bring him back against Detroit, in Detroit, against the 2-time division champions. No, to me, there's always going to be pressure on the starting quarterback, but maybe a slightly less pressure from the standpoint that the Vikings are not expected to win this game in Detroit. And so he can go out there, I think, and feel more comfortable and not have the weight of the world on his shoulders. He's going back to a city where he had great success in college, at Ann Arbor, at Michigan, led him to a national championship. So that'll give him all the more reason to be fired up to play in front of a lot of people who cheered him on at Michigan that now are certainly cheering for the Lions, maybe not cheering for JJ this week necessarily. But I think that could play in his favor going back to Detroit.
Yeah, and the Lions, if you kind of look at how their season has gone, I mean, they're just kind of starting to hit their groove. I mean, they blew out the Buccaneers on Monday night, but before that, I mean, you had seen them struggle against some of the teams that we figured to be also contenders in this league. The Chiefs, in week one, they went to Lambeau, really struggled there. But we know the talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is still prevalent. They may have lost both coordinators, and they may have lost some defensive players to injury and also to free agency. But that offense is still formidable with Goff, who doesn't make mistakes, Gibbs, who's explosive, and obviously St. Brown and Laporta, who continue to do what they do. And that's provide elite production. So I'm more worried about the Viking defense than JJ McCarthy in this game, even though you just gave me a speech on why it's great that we're going to see him play. Matchup comes down to the defense and whether or not they can force the Lions off the field on third downs.
That's going to be a key. And the Vikings had a lot of trouble against Justin Herbert and the Chargers. They went 9 of 13 on third
Bingo,
down.
exactly.
While the Vikings were converting only 3 of 11. So that's going to be a big factor in the game. We know that. And before we, as I said, we're going to really break this down fully on our Thursday show. But let's go back to the Charger game and cover a couple of plays that were really key plays in this game. First quarter, right out of the gate, and you knew it was kind of going to be a potential problem on the opening kickoff. Tyler Batty has a holding penalty that wipes out a 46-yard return by Miles Price. And then the guy did it again on the first kickoff in the second half, which to me is inexcusable, unbelievable that could happen. But as the Chargers on their first series after they held the Vikings, and on this particular play, Isaiah Rodgers, and we all thought, here's a pick six until it went to replay.
And that pass is picked up. Rodgers, no stranger to interceptions, gets another one. Touchdown.
They brought pressure there. You could see Metellus walking up, ends up bringing the pressure. That's a hot. He's trying to get the ball out. It's just behind. Good recognition by Rodgers. Did he complete that catch?
That's the question.
Let's make sure he caught that ball.
Well, all turnovers get reviewed. You don't need to challenge this.
Here's a great look here. That's as good a look as you're going to have.
Now, Jeff, if you walked into a third grade classroom and showed them that replay, and then showed them the replay from last week against the Eagles that TJ Hawkinson caught in the back of the end zone, and you asked a classroom of 30 third graders whether or not both of those were catches, would you say that you'd get more than not that both of those were catches? I mean, the Vikings got robbed a couple of times here. It doesn't mean that they were going to win the game. It doesn't mean any of that, but still they were game-changing plays, one late and one early.
Yeah, I thought the Hawkinson was even more blatant, that it should not have been overturned. This possibly he kind of lost control, and that's really on Isaiah, that it's not that difficult to catch. Make the play. You got to make the plays when they're presented the opportunity, especially early in a game that could be a momentum changer. And as you said, it probably wouldn't have affected the outcome ultimately, the way Herbert was dicing up the defense, and the Chargers were running the ball, all the things that were happening on the offense with the injuries, and Vikings not being able to run the ball, and Wentz being very inconsistent, erratic. So it probably wouldn't have changed it ultimately, but still, it's a huge play in the game. Second quarter, talking about how Justin Herbert was dealing against that Vikings secondary, and partially, again, a big problem. No Andrew Van Ginkel. It's had a huge effect on the pass rush, on the run defense. I think much more than people give credit for to a Pro Bowl edge rusher, outside linebacker. The thing that Andrew Van Ginkel does, he's a finisher, and he gets guys on the ground. And we saw on this opening drive of the Chargers, for example, Jonathan Grenard had Herbert all dead to right and couldn't bring him down. And the Chargers, instead of kicking a field goal, they scored a touchdown on an opening drive. I think Van Ginkel is a huge, huge factor in what's happened to that defense both run and pass. He sets the edge against the run much better than Dallas Turner does. Dallas is getting better, but he's 22 years old, still learning. And so here was Ladd McConkey, second quarter, a big play. He beats Jeff Okuda for a 27-yard touchdown.
2nd and 10. Going for it all. Out in front. Pulled in. Ladd McConkey. Touchdown.
And that was a 94-yard drive. Put the Chargers up 21-3 at halftime. Chargers outgained the Vikings 266-93 in the first half. Herbert goes 14 of 18 for 191 and 2 touchdowns. And the Vikings certainly behind the 8 ball early in that game. Third quarter, the Vikings do score a touchdown on a drive, and Carson Wentz hits Jordan Addison, pulls the Vikings within 14.
Low snap to the end zone. Touchdown. Jordan Addison.
As I said, 24-10 at that point. But it's just inevitable, the problems that the Vikings had in this game with the offensive line playing a bunch of backups, basically. Ryan Kelly, the center that they signed to a contract in the offseason, is still out with the concussion issues on IR. And then they lose both of their tackles. I said before the season, Robbie, that the Vikings, I thought, could be an even better team than last year because I felt like they had improved in the trenches on both sides of the ball. But I made a big if. I said, if that offensive line can stay healthy, because Kelly had injury issues. We know Darisaw was coming off the ACL. Brian O'Neill missed the end of the playoff game last year with a knee injury. And Will Fries had missed time last year with a broken leg. And so that was always going to be the key, staying healthy there. And then on defense, being able to shore up against the run, and which they did last year, but they've had issues this year against the run. And as I said, I think a big part of that, Van Ginkel out, Cashman missing a bunch of games. Now he's back. So a lot of things have happened, but I do think going into this Detroit game, and you talk about injuries and how teams have to overcome injuries. The Lions in that Tampa Bay game you mentioned, where they really dominated the Bucs 24-9, they were missing their entire starting secondary, but because the pass rush was so good, and because even the substitutes were playing well against Baker Mayfield and company. So you've got to have the depth also. And I would say to Brian Flores, maybe it's time to see what Dwight McLaughlin can do, because Jeff Okuda has struggled 2 weeks in a row. He struggled against the Eagles, gave up some big plays in that game. And again, the pass rush was not getting to Hurts. And then in this game, Okuda gets beat for that touchdown. Maybe McLaughlin is a young guy who can make an impact. We'll see. But so after that Addison touchdown, the Chargers on their ensuing drives, Vikings are down 14 at this point. They rush for 67 yards on the next drive, and they go up 31-10. Defense couldn't stop the run. Vikings were number 2 against the run last year, just struggling this year. Got to get better there, and they're going to face a couple of really good running teams the next 2 weeks. The Lions with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and then they've got Baltimore, who got back off their bad stretch and beat the Bears on Sunday. And Baltimore, of course, has plenty of running ability. we
And they should have Lamar Jackson back, yes.
Yeah, we assume Lamar Jackson should be back in 2 weeks, and Derrick Henry had a couple touchdowns against the Bears. So, yeah, got to figure out that run defense, certainly. Our last audio highlight we want to kind of focus on Carson Wentz. This was in the fourth quarter, kind of the nail in the coffin, more so to speak, for the Vikings in this game, and I would say for Wentz as the starting quarterback. Even though we knew McCarthy was going to come back at some point, but there's no doubt he has to come back after Wentz makes this bad overthrow to a wide open Jefferson that gets intercepted.
Wentz fires too high, picked off, intercepted there by Mickens.
So we're going to go hear from the head coach. We're going to hear from a couple players. And again, look around the league at some of the big games on Sunday. Amazingly, the Vikings got a lot of help. If they can get themselves on track, they got a
Yeah.
lot of help from a bunch of their NFC teams losing that are potential playoff contenders, including Kirk Cousins
I
losing
was
at
going to ask
home
you about
to,
that
to
one. Yeah.
Miami,
Yeah.
and Kirk did not get it done. But first, let's talk about our great sponsor, Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. GMC trucks weren't built overnight. Like every American achievement, they are a result of dedication and dedication to mastering the art of design and the science of engineering to building upon prior knowledge year after year, decade after decade. GMC, over 100 years dedicated to the art of engineering and the ambition to always move this country forward. We are professional grade. Well qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 crew cab models with a 5.3 liter engine with an average finance savings of $4,322 plus $1,500 bonus cash. That's a total value over $5,800 plus no monthly payments until next year. See your Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealer today. Length of contract limited, deferred monthly payments for 120 days. Must finance with GM Financial. Down payment required at signing if applicable. Finance charges accrue from date of financing. Some customers will not qualify. Savings based on bank rate of 5.64%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 11/3/25. Kevin O'Connell, Vikings head coach, got to figure some things out on offense with his young quarterback, with that offensive line. Quick passing game. got to get the ball out of JJ's hands. And Kevin talking about McCarthy's likely return in Detroit.
Find our identity as a group, and with JJ, he'll play an integral part of that from a standpoint of his ability to throw completions, his ability to get our playmakers involved, and his ability to use his athleticism that we saw, early on in the season, stealing some first downs here and there, using his legs, creating some plays, potentially out of the pocket to go along with hopefully finding a rhythm and a completion-based feel with a ability to find those explosives that have kind of defined, what our offense, can be when we're working at all cylinders. But it's got to be an all-11 thing. We've got to protect them. We've got to find a way to provide the quarterback with time to find those open players. And then for JJ, it's going to be about the commitment that he's made throughout his rehab to, getting back to those concrete fundamentals and techniques that allow his feet and eyes to work together and find completions, to any one of our 5 eligibles.
Kevin, and we've talked about Kevin O'Connell often on this show, and I think he is an excellent head coach of the year last year. We know all that, but for 2 weeks in a row, I think he's gotten a little pass happy in short yardage situations. It happened in that Eagles game on that second quarter drive when they're 2nd and 1 at the 6-yard line and throw it 3 straight times, one of which might have been Wentz audibling. But in this Chargers game, again, early in the game, 3rd and 1 on the first series, and they don't run it. They've got Jefferson coming out of the backfield, that's cool. It's okay. But instead of running the ball, again, they're trying to throw it on 3rd and 1. And at that point in the game, Darisaw was still in there, and Donovan Jackson, 1st-round pick, good run blocker. Oliver's still in the game, Josh Oliver, before he got hurt and left the game after the 9th play, which again hurt the running game the rest of the day. Again, pound the ball in that situation, 3rd and 1. That's what we were told Jordan Mason's role is going to be as a short yardage power back. And I know Aaron Jones was in the game at that point. So what? Then run Aaron Jones or put Jordan Mason in the game. But that's something they have got to be willing to run the ball in short yardage such as that. And maybe with McCarthy, they'll feel more confident doing it, even a quarterback sneak or a tush push or something. We'll
they
see.
Have Ham on the team too, and it just seems like after really getting off to a good start, even with Jones getting hurt and Mason scoring touchdowns on the ground, which is something that was foreign to this team in the last couple of years. You saw Darnold obviously launch an MVP campaign, and he was throwing touchdowns all over the field, and they really weren't running it a ton with Jones. Now this year with instability at quarterback, they're leaning on the run and they're unable to do that. And I think that's kind of why the offense really has malfunctioned through the first 7 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and CJ Ham unfortunately was inactive for this game with an hand injury, and so hopefully he'll be back for the Lions game because, as you said, one of the best blocking fullbacks in the NFL. And Justin Jefferson talking post game about keeping their heads up.
Of course, keep our head up, and of course, attack. What's in front of us, to not allow the adversity and not allow the losses to really hinder us and to really get in our way of what's in front of us. So it's just not really about reflecting on the bad things and reflecting on the loss. This is all about what we're going to do forward and what we're going to do. This upcoming practice, this upcoming week, and just trying to attack it head on and see where it takes us.
Justin had another nice game, but again, they need even more from him, more from Jordan Addison, a lot more from TJ Hawkinson, but it's hard to do if they can't pass protect and if they can't run the ball better. And so those are going to be keys going to Detroit. You don't want to get into a situation like they had against the Chargers, where the Chargers, because the Vikings couldn't convert third downs, the Chargers were converting third downs. The Chargers, 39 minutes of time of possession, Vikings 21. If that's going on in Detroit, that's big trouble. And as we know, you got to stop a running game for opposing team. The Vikings did a great job of that last season. They did it against Saquon Barkley against Philly, unfortunately, at the expense of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith going off. And is this symptomatic of the Vikings' luck this year, Robbie? A.J. Brown, after he torches the Vikings for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, he misses the game against the Giants with a hamstring. And so, of course, he played against the Vikings, didn't play against the Giants. Didn't matter. The Eagles still won that game. But it would have been nice for the Vikings if he was out last week.
and think about what Barkley did against the Giants yesterday. First play, 60-something yard touchdown. He's now second in NFL history with 9 60-plus yard touchdown runs. Who's first? Adrian Peterson with 15 for this franchise. And
Right.
Barkley did nothing against the Vikings. If you obviously we both watched the game, it was Flores basically saying to Jalen Hurts, beat us. And he did, including with the likes of A.J. Brown. And it just is the Vikings' luck. Maybe things will really turn around this week against the Lions. Maybe you can remember, I'm trying to remember the last time they went on the road and really beat a really good team. That miracle catch from Jefferson in Buffalo when they won that game, I would qualify that as a big win.
Oh, sure.
They went to Atlanta with Dobbs, and that was when he came in the game, and that felt like a cool win. But just in terms of the last year or two, they haven't really gone on the road and made a statement win. A lot of those Darnold wins, big wins, came at home, including over the Packers and the like. They lost to the Lions at home with him. But I think this could be a statement, kind of turn around the season game, and we'll see which way it goes.
Yeah, they did have a big win in Green Bay last year, week 4.
Oh, that's true. Yes, Love was hurt. Love was hurt, though. I mean,
which would qualify, and Darnold got a big win in Seattle with a late touchdown pass to Jefferson. So they've had some big wins on the road, but this Lions team has just been a nemesis for the last several years. They've been swept 2 years in a row. Going to be tough, we know that, but they're going to have to do better against the run. If they couldn't stop a third-string running back in Vidal for the Chargers, who had 117 yards on 23 carries, including a touchdown, going to be tough against Gibbs and Montgomery. We know that. And certainly Blake Cashman well aware, and he talked post-game about the Vikings defense.
This locker room that saw that coming. We believe in this group to achieve everything we want to achieve, all of our goals. But we fell short today. We didn't come to play. We didn't execute. And in this league, you'll be humbled quickly if you're not on the details.
Like, where did you feel like the sloppiness came from?
Where do I start? You know, I think it's just collective. Like, I'll speak for the defense. You know, we gotta be better at getting out blocks in the run game, and that's everybody. Me as a backer, defensive line. I think in the pass game, quarterback stepping up the middle and picking up a lot of scramble yards was really hurting us because it just was extending drives, and that was kind of the recipe of the game right there.
Now, coming out of that, looking at the Chargers and their effort against the Vikings in that game, if you look at the week before, they got pushed around by the Dolphins and they came into this game with a mindset. Now, the Vikings, for example, got pushed around by the Chargers. So maybe they're going to go into this next game with a different mindset that we can't let this snowball, and perhaps they're going to give that extra effort that may cause the upset. What's your thoughts on kind of that bullied around and then the next week kind of mentality of we need to show them kind of who's boss?
Yeah, I think there will definitely be that mindset, and it's a week-to-week league. We know that. It's just that Detroit is a tough nut to crack in this situation when you're coming in 3-4. And I had said going into the Charger game, they needed to split those next two games because I thought they'd get the win at LA and then probably get beaten Detroit. So now maybe it's just reverse. Maybe they need to beat Detroit. But before we go kind of around the NFL quickly, let's also again hear from our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
GMC trucks weren't built overnight. Like every American achievement, they are a result of dedication. A dedication to mastering the art of design and the science of engineering. To building upon prior knowledge, year after year, decade after decade. GMC, over 100 years dedicated to the art of engineering and the ambition to always move this country forward. We are professional grade. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 Crew Cab models with a 5.3-liter engine with an average finance savings of $4,322 plus $1,500 bonus cash. That's a total value over $5,800 plus no monthly payments until next year. See your local GMC dealer today. Length of contract limited. Deferred monthly payments for 120 days. Excludes residents of Pennsylvania. Must finance with GM Financial. Down payment required at signing if applicable. Finance charges accrue from data financing. Some customers will not qualify. Savings based on bank rate of 5.64%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 11/3/25.
So a couple other things going to this Lions game. And as I said, we're going to break it down on Thursday. Penalties. The Vikings had a better showing against Philly, only 3 penalties in that game. And then this kind of year-long problem resurfaced against the Chargers, 8 penalties for 66 yards. They have to be better. They can't put J.J. McCarthy in long yardage situations, 1st and 20 against that Lions defense. So that's going to be another key to the game, be better in that area. Going around the NFL, a couple big games that happened. The Packers down 16-7 at the half in Pittsburgh against their former quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, came storming back 135-25 on the road. Jordan Love was terrific. Completed 20 in a row at one point, 360 yards, 3 TD game. Green Bay, best record in the NFC at 5-1-1. The Bears had their 4-game winning streak snapped in Baltimore, which is going to give the Ravens some juice, and they'll be here the following Sunday after the Detroit game. That's going to be no easy game. Chicago's defense that had led the league in takeaways had no takeaways in that game. Other key games, the Colts improved to a league best 7-1, dominated the Titans. Jonathan Taylor, 3 more touchdowns, including an 80-yard run. Daniel Jones is still playing well for the Colts. The Eagles avenged their earlier loss to the Giants, whipping them 38-20. As you mentioned, Robbie, Saquon Barkley, a big game, 150 yards rushing, including a 65-yard TD run. Jalen Hurts followed up his big game against the Vikings with 4 TD passes. Atlanta upset at home by 2-6 Miami. Kirk Cousins got the start with Michael Penix out with a hamstring or knee injury. What did he have? I'm not sure what he had, but a knee injury for Michael Penix. And Kirk couldn't get it done. So as I mentioned before, despite a 3-4 record, the Vikings can jump back into the playoff race with a strong run over the final 10 games. May not start in Detroit, but maybe starts at some point here, because they were helped by 8 losses from several NFC playoff contenders, including the Bears, who are now 4-3. Atlanta's now 3-4. Dallas got beaten. Denver, they're 3-4-1.
Carolina.
Carolina got thumped by Buffalo,
Yep.
and they're 4-4. San Francisco lost in Houston. They're 5-3. Washington is at Kansas City with no Jaden Daniels for the Monday night game. They're likely to fall to 3-5. So it's still out there for the Vikings. Not saying necessarily that they're going to catch Green Bay or Detroit, but who knows? There's a lot of football left to be played. And as we said, it starts Sunday in Detroit, and we will be back to break it down on Thursday, give you our predictions and highlight some other key games around the league. And this has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota GMs, Buick GMC dealers, and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN. Available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. This is Jeff Diamond with Robbie Rosenhaus. We will talk to you on Thursday as we preview Vikings and Lions.